Hi everyone, the Mature Simmer here. Welcome to this overview of the aspects of the new Precision Farming DLC for Farming Simulator 22. I'm going to try to cover all the aspects and at least give you some basics. Obviously, we're all going to be learning a bit more about exactly how this functions as it goes along, but I'm going to be providing the knowledge I have from Farming Simulator 19 and using precision farming, along with going through and doing some work here with the new version for Farming Simulator 22. So as a point of reference, I'm using the Calmsden Farm's map, and I've got field 10, which I'm on here, and field 9. I've just cultivated field 10 to get rid of the grass that was on there so that it can be prepared, and my goal is to basically use the two fields to cover all aspects of the Precision Farming DLC. So let's get to it. So one of the first things you're going to see, which is new to Farming Simulator 22 with Precision Farming, is an environmental score, and this is the score of your fields in aggregate. There is an overlay that will show the score for each field. I'm not quite sure why it's not showing up right now, but it seems based on the mods you've got loaded. Sometimes you see it and sometimes you don't, so I will try to make sure I add some visibility of that in later if I can. But if I recall, one of these fields had an environmental score of 47 and one had an environmental score of 50. So you can see there are 5 things that go into the environmental score. Your nitrogen can go up to 30, your pH value can go up to 15, weed control can go up to 30, soil sampling can go up to 15, and tillage can go up to 10, which will give you a total score of 100. Now, depending on what you're doing, those scores are going to be impacted based on what you're doing, how you're working your field and what it's doing to the environment. So let's start with tillage, which is what I've gone ahead and done on field 10 here with the cultivating. If you do deep plowing, the information provided by Precision Farming is you're going to get a 0 for that because it brings up the seeds from weeds, brings them closer to the surface, and actually creates a larger problem. Your best option to get 10 is to do very minimal tillage and do direct seeding, which means you need to buy a seeder that seeds directly. In this case, because I've gone ahead and cultivated the soil, I've likely lowered the tillage score a bit. We haven't done soil sampling yet, so right now we're right at the center, but we're going to go ahead and do that in a bit, so we'll see how that score is affected. Weed control, there is a new sprayer technology available, spot spraying, or see and spray, I think as it's called, and we'll take a look at that on the sprayer that is supplied with Precision Farming. To get the maximum score, you need to use that. That will use, according to the help information, 90% less herbicide, and will also then not overspray, and therefore your environmental score is higher. If you spray, you'll get a benefit. If you don't spray at all, obviously, you'll get even less benefit. pH value is affected by liming your field. Fields need to be limed every 3 years. We're going to see what that looks like on some of the readings as we go forward. The closer you're in to the appropriate range, and each soil type, you can see there are 4 soil types over here on the side: loamy sand, sandy loam, and silty clay. They each have an optimal score, and your equipment and your precision farming information will be able to tell you that. Nitrogen, there's a change here from FS19. In FS22, you need to purchase a sensor when you're spraying nitrogen on your field to get the maximum score of 30. Otherwise, you can potentially over-fertilize, even with some soil sample understanding and some adjustments. So that gives us some basic understanding of the environmental score. Again, we'll see how that's affected. So here we can see the overlay that I was talking about by field with our environmental score to see how our overall score of 59 actually is created. Field 10 has a score of 45, field 9 a score of 72. When you hover over it, you can see your bars. So you can see basically we've got the middle score for everything, and tillage is a 0. And here we've got the highest score available for the 3rd and the 4th item. Everything else is in the center, so that if you want the details, so for weed control and soil sampling, we're maxed out, which again is 30 and 15. And then for the others, we're maintaining a 15, a 7.5, and a 5. And that's how we're getting to 72 on that field. Where here, we have 15 and 7.5, and 15 and 7.5. So basically 30 and obviously 15 gets us 45, and the tillage is down to 0. Now the way this is showing up, I disabled courseplay. So right now there seems to be an issue where courseplay not only hides the help menu and makes the help menu for precision farming invisible, but it also doesn't let you see this environmental score overlay. Now also be aware, if you're zoomed out, as you can see, it goes away. As you zoom in, it pops up, but I had tried that with courseplay before and was having an issue. The first thing that you're going to do with precision farming in most cases is you're going to get your soil samples, and you're going to get information about what you have in your soil, and that will start to fill out these information overlays that you get to with this precision farming icon, which is added into your general menu when you add precision farming into your game. So there are two ways that you can sample the soil with precision farming in Farming Simulator 22. One is with the soil sampler, which I will demonstrate later, but the other is to simply purchase a soil map. So if you select your field, as I have here, I've selected field 9 because that field already has crop on it. I can't effectively go soil sample because I'd be drilling holes in the soil, and that potentially could destroy crop. So I'm going to pick purchase soil information here. You're going to see it's going to tell us the number of samples that it needs and the service provider cost. So basically what you're paying the contractor to do that work, to collect 95 samples to cover this field. And then it gives you that total of 16,625. So I'll say yes. So immediately you can see a difference. That 16,625 for soil samples is now included as part of our economic analysis, but more importantly, we now have information about this field. So we have on the pH map, we can see that basically we're from 5.75 up to maybe 6.5, 6.75, perhaps even 7 on pH, which again is something that's affected by liming the field. And nitrogen, because we haven't fertilized this field before it was planted, I just started this map, this crop was already present. You can see the nitrogen content of the soil is very low, or in these ranges here. So that will be affected by fertilization, and we'll see that when we work on field 10. We're not seeing anything on yield yet, because that happens when we're harvesting, so we'll see that soon. And we're not seeding, so we don't see anything on seed rate. And then we also see the soil types we have on this field. So loam is really the best soil for growth. So the good news is this field is largely loam. There's a little bit of silty clay here and up here, and there's some sandy loam there, and luckily we don't have any loamy sand, which tends to be the worst kind of soil type. And now we're back to the pH again. So you can start to see with soil analysis what information you obtain from that. So one of the ways you can do it is purchasing the soil information if you don't actually want to go ahead and work on the soil samples. Now going back to my environmental score, you can now see I've also gotten an increase in soil sampling because now one of my fields is sampled. The other option you have for taking soil samples, which I'm going to use here on field 10, is to use the ISARIA Scout. So you attach that to a tractor. You need to unfold it. You can see in the mini-map, it gives you a bit of a circle to show you kind of when you're taking the sample, what it's going to cover. So you can position yourself appropriately and then hit the B key to go ahead and take your sample. You'll see it lowers down and then it picks it up, and then it leaves a red area on the map. And so now I hit B again, and so the method I've developed doing this is just, kind of move along this way try to overlap things and in essence do a kind of a headland pass. There's always a trick to maybe not missing segments of the field. Basically, you're able to move just a bit before it turns red. And gives you credit for it on the field. And then obviously you can also go out to your larger map, which I'll do here in a moment. So if you go to the larger map and then go here, you can see that soil types and soil sample taken appear there. So I'm going to finish this up, as it does tend to take a while. So if you have large fields, hundreds of acres, if you recall when we did the soil purchase of the map for the field next door, it said that would be 95 soil samples. Now that field is bigger than this one, but it's probably likely we're going to have 3 or 4 dozen here. Maybe not. You know, we are getting almost all the way across here. So, but I'll see when we're done, and I'll show you the next step to soil sampling this way. Alright, so here I am taking the last sample. So there we go. Turned red. If I go back here, you can see I've fully sampled the field. If I now zoom in, you can see soil sampling is up to 15 across the field. So yeah, so as you can see on the field score, the 4th line here, soil sampling, is now fully across. So that increases our environmental score a bit and brings up our average, obviously. So at this point we can fold the unit up, and you can see here that the soil samples taken, 16, and then the last item there, or third from the bottom, the third item from the bottom, send soil samples for analysis. So we're going to do that. We'll hit Y. Soil samples are now sent for analysis. You will see the results on the soil types map soon. So unlike when we purchase things, where as soon as we hit purchase soil information, everything filled in on the field here, so we can't see our soil types yet, some time's going to need to pass when you're taking actual soil samples, and that's to simulate the fact that you've sent those soil samples to the lab, and they're obviously now working on them and processing them. In the time it has taken me to go get my seeder, you can see that we've received information back from the lab here for field 10, and we can now see our composition. So we can see we have silty clay up here, and you'll find, just as you would expect in normal earth, that things flow somewhat logically. So the silty clay that was here continues on, and it may continue into this field, or it may be across the street. We really won't know until we work on those other fields, but we don't own them right now. You'll then see the sandy loam does the same thing, but we also have some loamy sand down here in the south. So that's going to impact things as we work. So one other piece I'm going to show you with regards to soil composition is on the base map. When you go to buy fields, you will now see with precision farming the field information. I believe this is accurate whether you do soil samples or have them or on the field or not. So you can see the field we just looked at, field 10, we know we had a little bit of loamy sand down in the south here, some sandy loam here, some silty clay up there, and then a lot of loam in the center. Subsequently here, we know this was mainly loam, didn't have any loamy sand, and you can see the yield potential is 115% on this field, 104% on this field. But if you're going to go ahead and buy another field, let's say we were considering field 5, we can click on that and see it'll be 101% potential. It's basically loam and silty clay, and you can see it's more silty clay than loam. And same thing, you know, you can do this with any field. So you can see here field 25, actually a lot of loamy sand, some sandy loam, very little loam, and so it's a negative. In this case, field 19, also a big improvement. But you get this additional information with having precision farming available, so that as you're trying to purchase land, you can make decisions. So for example here, field 32, look at that negative. But then right across the street, much more sandy loam and loam, a 25% swing by fields that are across from each other, simply because this is 100% loamy sand, the worst soil type we could have. Alright, so to take advantage of the fact that I have a couple fields here, I'm going to use field 9 here, which is very close to being ready for harvest, to kind of start showing the tail end of the precision farming capability. And in this case, we're going to look at weeds. So you can see here, if we go to our regular map and we go to the soil composition filter, we can see field 9 has some weeds. To take full advantage of the benefits of getting rid of weeds, we need to use this new John Deere R732i power spray, which comes from the Precision Farming DLC, as you can see here, and is found under sprayers. And you can see here it has See and Spray technology available, which is going to add 39,000. When you do that, you can see Precision Farming gives you some information that each nozzle of the sprayer will only turn on when there are actual weeds below the nozzle. With that, you may use 90% less herbicide, reducing costs and protecting the environment. So going ahead and doing that is the only way that you can get the maximum score for weeds in your environmental score. Alright, so you can see at this point we are spraying for weeds. You can see it's changing to brown where the weeds are being killed. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to work on this, and you can see, for example, out here at the edge, we're not spraying because there's nothing under, but now you can see the sprayer is starting to spray at the edge now that there are things, but you can see it's just really squirting periodically. They're not constantly spraying. So if we watch that nozzle here, let me see if I can get a better view at the end, you can see that end nozzle is not actually spraying anything. That's the benefit of the See and Spray technology, is that the sensor sees no weed under it at this point. Now you can see we are getting a little bit periodically. There you go, that end is just puffing right there. So it might be a little challenging to see, but you can see how that works, and in theory then that will use less herbicide to get this field taken care of. Let's see what else we can see in precision farming as this work is going on. So one of the most interesting things, if you're financially concerned about your farm, is the economic analysis that you will get. So you'll see we're currently seeing the economic analysis for field 9. It gives us the field size and tells us its value since last reset. And obviously herbicide here is actually changing live as it's being applied. And so you can see, and the cost here is basically 13% less than what would be expected. And, you know, we've got $63 more, you know, to the negative, but you can see where we're at. And so this also is not only doing herbicide, it's keeping track of fuel, it's doing anything with AI helpers. You know, because of the way I've got course play set, I'm actually not spending this money, so it's not actually completely accurate, but it gives you an estimate and gives you something to look at. And again, the maintenance you're going to have to pay to repair the vehicle is estimated. And as we do more things to the field over time, you'll start to see these other things fill out. So now, when we look at our environmental score, you can see our overall environmental score is creeping up. It's now at 55 because weed control has gone up to 22.5. So that is because we're using that See and Spray technology. I'm now ready to go ahead and do the next processes, which are both fertilizing and seeding. As you can see up in the upper left, we've got precision farming information that tells us about nitrogen and the mineral fertilizer application, and then also variable seed rate, which is new to FS22, and you can see that it's set to auto. Okay, so before we get going, I've also got this item on the front of my tractor. This is another ISARIA tool found here, the ISARIA Proactive. And as you can see, this is a crop sensor where you can measure the nitrogen uptake of the crop to apply more precise fertilizer rates. The other alternative to the ISARIA Proactive is the ISARIA Pro Compact, which is actually purchased with vehicle configuration. So if we change this here again, we have a pop-up here that gives us some information from Precision Farming. This is new to FS22, but the ISARIA Pro Compact does the same thing as the active, and it will sense it to figure out what nitrogen is required, but the difference is, compared to the ISARIA Pro Active, this sensor can only be used at daytime. So the ISARIA Pro Active has lights on it. So if I go ahead and unfold this, I don't know if they'll turn on right away. They may not, but basically in the night it will project light down. In addition, let's see if we turn them on. So if you can afford it, the active is best because it lets you work at night. So as I drive onto the field, you're going to notice something here. So what you will see now is in the nitrogen mineral fertilizer application, what you're seeing, you can see the text below the bar, increasing the nitrogen level to the optimal value for wheat on silty clay. So what Precision Farming is doing is it's taking into account the crop type we're going to plant, which right now we're set to wheat, and the soil type we're planting it in, and then applying the appropriate level of fertilization to that to give you the optimal growth. So as I change what I'm planting, you'll see barley stayed the same, but oats, you'll see we only need 90 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare instead of the 130. If I continue to change, canola 70, back up to 130 for soybeans, and then here we're on sorghum, I believe, and this crop does not require additional fertilizer, so I would not use any fertilizer at all. And then it's 110 for oilseed radish. And once again, grass does not require additional fertilizer. Wheat is the most, needing 170. Barley 130. So you can see it changes per crop type. So by default, there are not keys set up to do certain commands in Precision Farming. But in this case, you'll see I set up the seed rate, and I can deactivate that. And you'll see below, now it's showing 300 seeds per meter squared. And then I can change the seed rate using keypad 0 and numpad decimal. So you can see I can go to 420, which is the highest, 300, or 180. So I've got 3 settings. You'll also notice if I change to canola, the low setting is 35 seeds per meter, 52, and 70. So the seed rate varies by crop type as well, and you're able to manually adjust it if you'd like that type of control, or you could simply go back to automatic and it will then do what it needs to as you go along and plant. So before I begin here and begin planting down the field, I wanted to bring up field map again to remind you of the soil types we're going to be traveling through. We're going to start with silty clay that we're in right now and that we're seeing the settings for. We're then going to go through loam, sandy loam, and we're going to have a tiny bit of loamy sand, so it may be hard to see that. But keep an eye on the changes of the meters that we see in the help menu. So watch the nitrogen. The variable seed rate may show us things as well, but it may simply sit at auto and never tell us what it's planting. But I'm going to go ahead and turn this on, and you'll see the nitrogen bar change as we change soil types, and you'll be able to see the soil type change with the name at the bottom as well, where right now we're planting canola on silty clay. Alright, so you can see we're doing 52 seeds, 130 kilograms of nitrogen, and shortly we'll be hitting the loam. There we go. So now we're adding more fertilizer but less seeds in loam. We're down to 35 seeds per meter squared, and 155 kilograms of nitrogen for the loam. And then eventually we're going to hit the sandy loam, I believe is what's next, and then loamy sand right at the last point. So there you go. Higher seed count, slightly lower nitrogen, and then we're going to see a very brief loamy sand. So there you go, 110 and 52. So if I now switch here, you're going to be able to see we applied standard, low, and standard seeds, and canola is the only type that does that. Other plants, and I will plant other crops here. I'm just doing this for a demonstration. So we're going to mix crops on this field. So pH is lime. We're not applying lime right now, so the lime shows as it is how it's set right now. But we are applying fertilizer, which is what affects nitrogen. So you can see we've gone from the orange range, which is low, up to the green range, which is the optimal range that we want. And it will vary by soil types. So we had 4 soil types, so you can see 4 distinct different colors of fertilization. So for the most part, those will match the soil type flow that we have on the field when we go back here. So I know it can potentially be a lot to take in. Whoops. So we need to turn this back on. But you'll see loamy sand. Now we're sandy loam. Things change. And then as we move further up, we're going to hit loam, and then we're going to hit silty clay at the north end of the field. And so what precision farming is doing for us is applying exactly the right amount of fertilizer and planting exactly the right amount of seeds. The other thing it's going to do for you with fertilizer is, without precision farming, you need to fertilize twice. That's no longer the case with precision farming. This is applying fertilizer one time at the appropriate rate. Alright, so at this point I'm planting wheat and fertilizing. So you can see we're doing 420 seeds. So seeds are going to consume much faster. So is the fertilizer at 170 and now 120. We're still at 420 seeds, but because we're still in silty clay. Now we're in loam, so we dropped to 180. So you're going to see less seed consumption. But it's important to understand, again, you're fertilizing once. You have to do one pass, and then you are fully fertilized. So, and you're checking your fertilization on the precision farming map now. It no longer exists in the base map. So now we're to a standard level of 300 seeds in sandy loam. And we're likely going to jump up to, yes, a high level in loamy sand. So in your economic analysis, you'll now see we've got the soil samples, we've got the fertilizer we've put down, we've got the seeds we've put down. And we've used various fuel. If I go over to field 10, again, we've done different things there. We've done herbicide that we've applied, and we've used some fuel. But that's all we've done over there for now, because that crop is growing. I could go through and spray it and fertilize it and increase the yield. But you understand the concept. I'm not going to go ahead and do that. If I was playing this game for performance, I certainly would try to fertilize before my crop was ready for harvest, because that would increase my yield. To finish off the fertilization, your other opportunity to fertilize with precision farming is naturally with manure, with a slurry tank. Just like they have a specific sprayer with some sensing technology, there is also a John Deere manure sensing technology that is available on a new Garant Cote PTR 30.000. And you can see, we'll detect the nitrogen in your manure, as the nitrogen in the manure is never homogeneous. The sensor guarantees the application of the same nitrogen amount all over the field. So you need to spend a little bit on your slurry spreader, if you spread slurry, to improve that. Now another thing I've discovered that's interesting to note is slurry spreaders that are part of the base game do have this John Deere manure sensing add-on that you can put on as well. So you can see here I'm looking at a Calmsden as well. This will go ahead and allow you to add that. But if I go to sprayers, this is a sprayer I typically have used in base game, and you'll notice there is no See and Spray on the sprayers, where on the John Deere I have a See and Spray. So keep in mind, if you're trying to spray and fertilize using liquid fertilizer, you're not going to be able to get the full benefit from the environmental side if you do that. I'm now going to go ahead and affect the pH value. So you can see now we have lime application, and it's applying to get the pH level up on the soil type. It's important to understand pH, which is affected by lime, is not dependent on crop type, whereas nitrogen, which applies is adjusted by fertilizer, is dependent on crop type. So while the crop sensor is deployed on the front of the unit, I just wanted you aware that that in fact is not impacting how much lime is put onto the field. So you can see we're on loam. It's got to be at 6.75 on loam. Now the amount is changing based on the current pH, because again, if we look at that pH map in the mini map, you can see there are variations. They're not simply by the location. So now sandy loam needs 6.5 and loamy sand needs 6. So it's going to continue to adjust that and continue to work through that as it goes along. And now here on the pH map you can see that it is making those adjustments. And then also, more importantly, we're getting lime applied, so our economic analysis includes everything. This is a change from FS19, because herbicide, for example, was not in FS19, so when you went ahead and did weed control, it didn't function, or it did not show those values in the economic analysis. This should give you an idea of how pH works on the field, and once again, you're not going to see that you need lime on the field in your base map. You're now going to notice that with pH values, and then when you're applying, so you can see it's doing as little as 0.25. You can see how slow the lime is going down in the counter in the bottom right. Where normally, if you're used to playing Farming Simulator and seeing how lime is applied, it's one of the fastest consumed items you have in your supplies, and you're constantly running out. So you'll notice when it turns on here, again, we're applying 0.25. It is moving faster at this point because it's more than it was. Now at 0.5, you can see it's spinning very fast. And as that continues to change or increase, you can keep an eye on the consumption down below and notice it truly does affect the rate of consumption. So it's staying at 0.5. Okay. So the other piece I want to take a look at is now again on your field you have precision farming info. So you can see, I'm going to try to put it where it's a little more visible. You've got silty clay, you've got your soil type. It's showing here as pH. Again, lime is perfect at 7. Nitrogen in the perfect range, even though it's a slightly off 155 to 160, saying that's perfect. It's telling us the expected yield 80%, the yield potential is 89%. Now again, we have weeds on the field. You can see that weeds are small. It's also saying it needs rolling. That's some of that yield potential difference. If I now march over here, you can see pH value here, where I don't have lime applied, is bad. Expected yield is therefore slightly lower. Nitrogen is in good shape. Now here in the area of the field, we are planted, so we are sitting in the area where we planted canola. You can see the crop type canola, growth is growing. pH value is okay. We haven't applied lime, but it's not terrible. It's not in the bad range. So remember, lime normally goes on every 3 years. So this will be what you see as the deterioration, and then when your field goes to bad, you then know that's when you really should apply lime. But the benefit you have with precision farming is you can apply lime every year if you'd like, just to keep everything in the perfect range, and you're not going to waste lime like you would have if you had gone ahead and applied it before, because this will limit the application to what is needed. And you'll notice that our nitrogen, our fertilization here, is perfect because we planted and fertilized. Now I'm going to move across that line. Now the precision farming information changes a bit. This is not a planted area. You can see in the field info, there's nothing planted, there's nothing growing, we just have weeds. The pH value is okay because the pH, again, is affected by soil type, not crop type. So it can give you detailed information because it knows the soil type from the soil sampling we did. But nitrogen, it can't really tell you anything other than how much nitrogen is in this particular area of soil, which is 75 kilograms per hectare. But it doesn't know if that's good, bad, okay. So it can't give you that information because there's no crop here. It doesn't know. That is crop dependent as well as soil type dependent. So again, there's a lot to keep track of, but it's really not as complicated as perhaps it sounds. Right, so aside from a real sloppy mess on field 10 here, because we're obviously doing this as a tutorial and just showing you how things work, you know, hopefully you're starting to get the idea. So again, pH affected by lime, nitrogen affected by fertilizer, yield we're going to see in a bit, seed rate affected by soil type, and the soil types that give you information. The final piece of the precision farming puzzle is the yield. So we've got a harvester running here at this point, moving along. Really, the goal is not to harvest the field per se, it's just to give you an example of what you'll see in precision farming. The mini-map you can see has a yield indicator in it. We've got additional information here. So you can see orange is low yield, 60-65%. Doesn't look like we have any red, so maybe we're getting up to 70. Then as we get into the yellows, we're between 80 and 90%. And as we get into the greens, if we have some, we have a little bit there. We're at, you know, the high yield we would expect. Now keep in mind, the yield type sometimes has to do with the soil. It obviously has to do with what else happened to the soil. So we're now going to see the yield is dropping because we're now getting into silty clay, which in many cases will have a lower yield, especially when not appropriately treated. Now we can see here when we get out of the harvester, the pH value is bad. If we go into the crops, pH value is okay, so the pH value will change once we harvest, but the nitrogen is incredibly bad. It should be at 120, and we're at 35. So you can see the expected yield is 97%, where the yield potential is 125. So we've really lost significant amounts of yield here. You know, similarly, when we're here, you know, we can see the yield, the expected yield is 75%, so I want to be just slightly ahead of the harvester here. We're going to go ahead and cut a little bit in here and take that detail. But if I now zoom over here, you can see I'm in that orange range, 70, 75, not quite up to 80%. So what I'm seeing on the field is accurate, where this is telling me when I go here, I should be up potentially near that 125. But I've lost that yield, obviously, because of where I was located. I think this is just going slow because in theory it's turning. So the final point to kind of take a look at as we start to wrap up this tutorial, as you change these types, you'll see the maps will update. So, you know, if you want to go back and then change between your nitrogen and your yield, for example, you'll be able to watch that as you go along if you'd like. You can then see your yield here is showing up, And then this is now starting to offset based on, I believe, average prices in game, you know, the cost that you've put into this field. So again, we've done soil samples, we've put some herbicide in, that's all we've done. And we are now harvesting, and that is slowly dropping things down as we get more and more liters into the harvester. Now, the harvester is going to get full. I'm not going to take the time to empty it because we don't need to. But hopefully this has given you a good example of the power of precision farming. So some of the key benefits to keep in mind: you no longer have to do jobs multiple times that you had to do before. You get significantly more information so that you're able to make better decisions, and you're also able to control your costs better because you're not over applying fertilizer, you're not over applying lime, you're not over applying herbicide. You're doing everything at the correct rate. You're not over planting seeds, for example. In previous version of FS19, the impact was lime and fertilizer, and it did not include natural fertilizer, i.e. manure. So they've added the benefit of manure, they've added the benefit of seeds, they've added the benefit of herbicide. All of these things are vast improvements to what we had. Very, very interesting. I love the way they're implemented. A big change from FS19 too is you do now need that crop sensor, where before your system was able to determine the crop types based without that. It was able to know that. But now you have a sensor that will give you that ability. So you are going to have that, but they give you a couple options. If you want to save a little bit of money and you're only going to do things during the daylight, you can try to use the compact instead of the active. But if you want more flexibility and more capability, use the active. But once again, so you have an economic analysis. You will be able to tell the yield percentage you're getting off your fields. You'll be able to tell the seed rate you're using, soil types you have. You're going to get an environmental analysis that you can take a look at. So you can see this field, very, very good at this point. You know, if I turn that off, my nitrogen is now stripped away because, you know, I've pulled that off because it's never fertilized. If I then harvest this, as the nitrogen goes up, it obviously was fertilized. You know, how your lime is set, how your fertilization is done. So you get all that information. You get the added information when you're buying fields of what your expected yield potential could be. So I'm hoping this journey through precision farming has given you what you need to use it with more confidence and get the most benefit out of it. Please drop me any questions you have. If there's other videos with more detail that perhaps you'd like, be happy to dig into things more and share what I know. Comments and discussions are going to be important on things like this. This is a complicated DLC, especially if you've not used something like this before. But again, there's lots of people out there like myself who've used it for a while in the previous version, understand it. But just like anything, we're learning as well, as there's new features included here, and there may be other things that I come across that I'll share in the future. But for now, I wanted to get a good basic understanding with a lot of detail out there for you guys to be able to use and enjoy this free addition to the game with confidence. Please, if you like what you see and you want to hear more of what I've got to provide for you, please subscribe to the channel. And if you've liked this video, please obviously drop a like down below. That'd be greatly appreciated as well. And I will see you next time.